Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, where we talk to amazing people doing incredible things that lead the charge of generosity. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that's what makes them awesome. Today, our guest is Sophie Blais. Sophie is creating some serious ripples in the pond at their company, Wealthco. Growing up in a small town, Saskatchewan, Sophie was always curious about what makes people tick, how everyone is different, and how to embrace those differences. Now an HR guru, Sophie is continuing the very same thing at Wealthco by meeting people where they're at and helping them grow and develop their way. She leads the team at Wealthco by trusting her gut, seeing obstacles as opportunities, and knowing that it's not about her, it's about others. Sophie gets to better the pond by simply being herself. Sophie Blais, I am so happy and so excited to have you as a guest on my Better the Pond podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Warren. I'm very happy to be part of your Pondcast, and hopefully I'll give you a good impression of a duck.
And a goose. We'll see. And I love the yellow sweater is fantastic. And if you wouldn't mind showing the coffee mug.
All for you, Warren.
I am thoroughly impressed. So before we jump right into all the questions that we have for you today, can you tell me just a little bit about Wealthco? Tell me a little about the culture. And, when I met David at the Tech Canada meeting, he really got my attention when he started talking about the culture you have with the organization. What you guys are doing, how much you take care of your people. You are one of the very, very rare organizations that I've come across that really use tools to the depth that you do. And the impact that you have on people. So if you wanted to kind of give us kind of a nice little glossy overview of Wealthco and the culture and the work that you're doing.
We could talk for the whole hour on that, but so maybe I'll start a little bit about Wealthco. So the Wealthco group of companies was founded about 20 years ago by David Udy, who's our CEO. And about 12 years ago, I joined that team. And effectively what we do is our raison d'etre, our main focus is to change the way financial services are delivered in Canada. And how are we going to do that is we work with entrepreneurial CPA firms and we support them in terms of providing wealth planning to their clients. There's a variety of different ways. So that's kind of the what. The how, we've got 4 separate companies under the Wealthco group. We have Wealthco Asset Management. So we are a portfolio management firm and we manage 4 proprietary pools, And our focus really is on providing more pension style investments to retail clients. The second is we have Wealthco Risk Management, which does estate and tax planning and works with not tax planning, but the estate planning, working with the CPAs to deliver that to their clients. We have a benefits division as well as a planning division. So kind of that whole piece. Some of our CPA firms have in-house financial planners that we work with, and we have some smaller firms who leverage our team, our planning team, to work with them and their clients. So it's lots of fun. We've evolved over the years, and we were talking about being quick starts before, so we've made some changes, but we are 110% committed to our client, which is the CPA firm, and helping them grow their businesses and really helping elevate them in the marketplace.
And so you talked about the what and the how. So, and I can rest assured, I'm sure you know the why. So give me a bit of why does Healthco exist? Why do you do what you do? And why does it matter what, even the work that you're doing? We talked earlier about, you're using Colby through all your organization, you're using print through your organization, using strengths for your organization. So why are you doing all that work?
Well, if you think about, most people have a story as to, a finance story. And I always say there's 2 things that enable decision-making in most things. Finances are no different, and that's head and heart decisions. And, head decisions are the math and what makes the most sense. And heart decisions have a lot to do with how people are wired. right? So even back before I became Colby certified, or before we started looking at print and strengths, spent a lot of time on psychographic profiling of clients and what makes people tick and why do they make the decisions that they make, and we all have those. If I think back on mine, my like comments that people make in your life. So my dad, we were middle class, but he'd always say we're poor, but we sure eat good, right? Or though he who makes the gold makes the rules. And so everybody has a money story. And I've always been fascinated with people. I started in the group benefits side of the business and why business owners do what they do, the businesses that they started, why. And for us at Wealthco, and whether it was David or those of us that have come since, it was about making people's lives easier. So if you think about business owners, you think about kind of what their lives are like, and that's me and that's you. You've got your business life and then you've got your personal life. And somewhere in between there, it's got to be integrated. But a lot of our support mechanisms, or a lot of our team around us, sit in one side or the other. And really truly integrated advisory and what we're trying to bring to the CPA community and work with them on has everything to do about meshing those two pieces together and really making sure that the client gets an opportunity to live their best life overall and has all of the different pieces in place to get them to the end. And it's about people. It's about wanting people to benefit, I think, from a lot of the opportunities that exist that they never ever know about or never learn about or don't have time for.
Yeah, probably all three. But it is interesting just on the financial perspective of that, right? And growing up, and I think that's a really interesting point. And God, we could talk for days about this, but but it's because we all do a money story, right? And when I grew up, we always laughed that everything was skinny. That's what we used to call everything. So if mom, we never have hot chocolate. She'd buy like cocoa with a little bit of sugar, and then we used to call it skinny cocoa, right? Because mom would put just enough in to have flavor, right? But it was never this rich, we never had steak ever.
Yeah.
The steak was expensive, so that was our money story. That was, and the typical ones, like money doesn't grow on trees and all those kind of things like that. It's really fascinating on how we have this story growing up and generationally, how that keeps playing it out and our belief systems that drive our money decisions.
Well, and it drives a lot of other decisions, not just about money, right? So, and again, too, you could tie the profiles into that. And if you were to look back on the people, like where some of that stuff came, you could probably guess and go, you know what? They're more of a fact find, or they took more risks, right? Like you hear people's stories where mom and dad, or dad took a whole bunch of risks and lost 3 businesses until finally making it. Right, and to me, it is fascinating because all of those stories are all good. Like they all drive, they're all really important. But one thing that's consistent through all of them is oftentimes, because the good stories always have a bit of drama to them.
Of course.
Is they missed a piece and they missed some good counsel, right? And they missed some of that coaching or access to the information that they needed to maybe make a better decision or make a different decision in their life.
It's funny. I do tell the story when I talk about my Colby. So as we talked earlier, I'm 2486. So I'm a 2 in fact finder and 8 quick start. And so when I go to my financial advisor for our annual review, I give her, so they're typically a book an hour as a rule, which is pretty standard. And I always laugh. I give her 58 minutes of her life back. So I go in, did I make money? She says, yes. I said, what percentage? She says, well, 16% or whatever it is. I'm like, okay, see you later. Like, I'm going to give you the gift of time. You have 58 minutes of your life that I would have actually swallowed up and have given you no value to. I don't want all the details. I don't want all the specifics. I don't care how we got there. That's your, and I know her MO as well. And so she's a very long fact finder, very long follow through, resistant quick start. So it's like she builds all the structure and everything, make sure that all happens, right? All I want to know, just the bottom line.
Yeah.
Was it good? Was it bad? Do we need to do anything different?
Yeah.
Have a nice day, right? So, and that's how I make my basically my money decisions, right? Is, I don't have to sit down and go through all the charts and the graphs and all the portfolios. I don't care. I really don't care. Right? Did it work? Did it work? That's all I need to know. Right? So it's and I'm sure and I'm sure, from your world, right, on the other side of it, right, you'll come across that for your clients as well and be able to serve them their way.
Yeah, and I think that's what the team tries to do. We work, exclusively with CPA firms, and so typically high fact finds on that end. Their clients are different, so you're trying to find that happy medium between making sure that the CPA has the information that they need. They're the trusted advisor. The reality is most people go to their CPA, their accountant, for advice on everything.
Mhm.
And so it's making sure they have the information they need, but that we're also appealing to their clients when we work together, and making sure they have what they need kind of in the manner that's the most consumable, I guess.
But I think what's important about that is what's consumable for them, like for the client, not for the advisor, right? Which is a bit of a game changer, right? It's not, you figured out it's not about you, right?
Well,
So
it's never about you, and that's probably a good dovetail into culture. So if you think about, our culture, and you had asked about what is the culture like at Wealthco, and, I think it could be summed up by saying we like to have fun. So one of the things that was always really important to us, and we always talked about, was, you've got to be having fun doing what you're doing. And I've lived my whole entire life based on that fact. If you're not happy doing what you're doing, then you need to find something else. And so I've lived that way. That's what I share with my kids. To me, there's no other point. And we had an individual on our team who came from very much the investment space before. And, we were doing, I think it was a 6-month review, getting feedback on thoughts on the company. And he said, I've never worked in a place where there was so much laughter. And so for us, making sure it's a fun environment, it's not that it's not hardworking, but that there is an ability for people to connect on a personal level, have some fun, right? Enjoy what they're doing, enjoy who they work with, which is part of doing the profiling, so that you take away some of the personal. People aren't treating you that way. Like they're not picking on you by asking more questions, or picking on you by asking for you to move faster, get things done faster. It's how the other person is wired. We can create more of that collaborative environment. And, for us, transparency is key. So it's about being transparent with our team. We do quarterly town halls. We share our financials. We are very honest about what's going on, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's someplace in between. And, we feel that that's who we are as people, and that's how we want to live our life at work, the same as we live it at home. And so that's kind of been a big piece of it. And, we talk a lot about innovation and how we want our people to be innovative. And it doesn't mean that they change everything, but in their roles, they're all entrepreneurs, right? So we as entrepreneurs, we want to surround ourselves with entrepreneurs, which are individuals who own what they're doing, own the outcome, and want to make it different. So they each have their little business within the bigger business. And that's been powerful for us. And, our best ideas come from the front lines.
It's so interesting. We speak the same language. And but it's funny you say that. It's, you want it to be fun, and here's the old adage of, find me an accountant who's fun. Find me right. Find me somebody in financial services who's fun. It just sounds like an oxymoron. So, but you guys are doing it, and that's absolutely fantastic. Well done.
I think so.
Round of applause. So let's jump right into the questions of the podcast, and I want to get to know you, Sophie Blais. So, let's go back. I want to find out what got you from being a gosling, and I'm talking like going way back when little Sophie, right, the gosling, to leaving the nest to where you are today. Sophie Blais, what is your backstory?
Oh. So, it seems a bit trite, but I am a Saskatchewan girl. So born and raised in small town Saskatchewan.
Which small town Saskatchewan, for all Saskatchewan listeners?
Born in Prince Albert, and I was raised in North Battleford.
Okay, so northern Saskatchewan, very nice.
Mhm. Let's see
And
where this
and
down.
and and how many years were you in PA and North Battleford?
So born in PA, lived in Saskatoon for a while, then moved to North Battleford when I was in grade 3. And, lived there until I went actually back to Prince Albert to boarding school for grade 10, 11, and 12. So boarding school with the nuns, and which, had its ups and had its downs, but truly at the end of the day, I think it was a really, really good thing. It was an opportunity for me to, be surrounded by other people who were really, ambitious and serious about school and, wanted to do different things. And so for me, I was always that kid that talked too much in class. So in addition to
Okay.
being in addition to being an initiating quick start, I'm ADHD. And so, for me, I just was always fascinated with people. I was friends with everybody. I didn't really fall into the clique piece. And I was always looking to get out of small town Saskatchewan. And I mean, no offense, I love going back home. I love going back and visiting people, but I was always looking for something kind of bigger and broader. And I truly, I did a ton of drama, music in school, and you kind of name it there, and was going to go to fine arts school, but again, that voice in the back of my head, which is probably my dad, was, you can't make a living doing that. And so I did a year of university at the Faculté Saint-Jean in Edmonton, which is a French faculty, so I'm bilingual, and then decided to go study and backpack in Europe when I was 19 years old. And, that was a really big deal for me. And, coming from a small town, this was before cell phones, so that's aging me a little bit, Warren. Went with two of my friends. We studied at the Université de Caen, which is in northern France, decided that one term was good enough, and we backpacked all through Europe and really gave, kind of that broader scope that the world is a big place and there's a lot of amazing people out there, and, find out as much as you can about them and find out as much as you can about different things, and really truly in the grand scheme of things, your life's pretty good.
It's always good.
So,
It's always good to have a different perspective, isn't it?
mhm,
I want to come back to something you said that's really, really intrigues me, because of the work you're doing now. You said you were, you were curious about people. You were people interest. People always interested you.
mhm.
Can you go back to a time where that started to migrate in your brain? Like, what was it that was the driver behind that? Or how old were you when you actually really started to pay attention to those things about what people did, or what was it for you?
So on the strengths, my number one strength is individualization. So individualization is that interest in other people, what makes them tick, and helping them kind of, meet their potential, to summarize it up. And, I think that was always the case. Like, I don't really remember a pivotal moment where I'm like, oh, people are interesting. But I was always just friends with everybody. Like, I really didn't, and I didn't care, which can be hard. It's like, you think about growing up in the 80s and the 90s, it's not always easy. But to me, it was just, yeah, like, I was interested in what people did. I was interested in them as people and interested in what made them tick. And so, whether it was the people that I went to high school with, or the girls from boarding school that were from all different cities, or towns, or whether it was studying overseas, and, we were friends, had friends from, England, the US, from various countries in Europe. So it was always something that I thought, that's interesting. That's different than me. Not bad, but it's just different. And so, I think too, just paying attention to people, and, whether it was my parents or my family and my siblings, and what maybe they needed, or how they were different than I was. Like, I have one sibling who's much more intense than I am. And I was just always like, well, I wonder why that is. Now I know a lot more why that is. But at the time, I just thought, well, that's who I am. because it is who I am.
How exactly you are who you are. How many in your family?
There's 4 kids. I'm the eldest.
You're the eldest, and so brothers or sisters?
1 brother, 2 sisters.
One brother, 2 sisters, and you were the oldest, so you got all the attention at the beginning and they got forgotten about at the end.
Well, I left, right? So I went away to school in grade 10.
Right.
So I left home, I was 14 years old. And I came back for summers and stuff like that. But, I really was, was my decision to go away to school, tried to get kicked out. out. And I'm grateful.
The same language.
I'm grateful to them. And it was probably because one of my aunts, my great aunts, was a member of that community and told them to have pity on me. But you know what? And I'm really glad they didn't, because it did teach me a lot about working with other people. You live with a bunch of girls, right? Grade 10, 11, 12, and you build a community, you work together, all those types of things. Like, it was important, some really important life lessons for sure, early on.
So was that your decision to go to boarding school? Was that ultimately yours, or was there some another driver behind it?
No, ultimately mine. I was sick of small town North Battleford, and wanted something different. I was smart, and it wasn't cool to be smart, and I wasn't going to change being smart. And that sounds arrogant. I don't mean it to, but there just wasn't any motivation for me to stay. And so I'd known of the school because of my aunt, and I knew some people that had gone. And so I asked to go. It was my decision to go, and got there and went, ooh, what have I done? What has my quick start done?
Hey, wait a second. This didn't work out the way I thought it.
But I'm eternally grateful that my parents, said, okay, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you'll do. But they also said, you do a full year. So you got to stick to it for a year. And I did, and then I went back.
Did it make you kind of grow up in a hurry to be a little more individual? Did it build your confidence? How did that sort of affect you? I mean, at that age, you're not living at home anymore, right? You don't have the typical shelter that everyone, most kids have. I was on my own at 17. So as I said, we talk the same language, but how did that seem to affect you in the long run at that age, to go on sort of on your own in a way? I mean, you still had, boarding school, but.
So I was always independent, even as a little kid, and always very curious, kind of precocious, and the ability to talk to anybody. And so you figure out how to work with different types of people, and I think that was great. And I think it just fueled that independence and that confidence that I already had, in that, like, the world is a big and amazing place. So my son is graduating this year from grade 12. And I remember how that felt, and all of the opportunity, and all like that this was going to be such an amazing time in my life. And it was, and I kind of, he is not the same profile as me. He's an assistant fact find. And so I was excited about what comes next. And I find that hard to understand, but I think it gave me more self-confidence, and just kind of reaffirmed that I could do what I set my mind to, and what I was passionate about, and what I believed in.
So I have two questions for you, and we'll move on. Is number one, did you have big 80s hair? Is the question.
No, not really. I had more alternative hair.
Oh, okay.
And we had to. Yeah, so like it's funny, my daughter wants to do her hair the same way. So it was really short on one side, longer on the other side. But I did not have, I did not. It was a bit more self-contained.
It's funny to look back in your books, mid-80s, like, that was a lot of hair. And so my next question to you is going to be of, when you left the nest and actually sort of went out into Europe, again, what did that teach you, and how have you taken what you learned as a kid? You were naturally, like, obviously you were very naturally curious. You talked about understanding people, all those things, right? How has that then played out into your life now?
I think if we go back, so we lived with a host family in Europe, and that was fascinating. So we had an apartment upstairs, but we would have dinner with them probably 3 or 4 times a week. They were a lovely, lovely couple, Monsieur and Madame Ernaud, and they grew up in the Second World War. And so they told a lot of stories about, and one was from a more affluent family, and the other one was from a poor, poor family. And they told a lot of stories about, the German invasion. They told a lot of stories about how, one would go and get the parachutes would come down and they'd go cut the parachute material so they could have clothes, or having to keep watch as little kids while, the community kind of slaughtered a cow and divided it up, and, the Germans were marching by. And I remember thinking, going, we are so lucky here. Like we're so lucky. And that was very impactful for me because we don't have those types of hardships here. And hearing about it first person really was like, you know what, like the world is a huge place. And, Canada is to a large extent quite sheltered from it. Even hearing about when they came on Normandy Beach. So I studied very close to Normandy Beach. When the Allies came in and the Americans, and that my host mother had never seen an African American before, right? Never. And so what that was, and how they were so happy to be free, but also kind of a bit scared because they'd never seen anybody like that before. And it really did make an impact on me. I think about that quite a bit, because it just said, everybody kind of has their own story and their own reality, and meeting people from all over the world and spending a lot of time in different countries. Spent quite a bit of time in Turkey, in Spain. Just like everybody's people, we're all people and we all live our lives, but we all have a different context, which makes us and brings us to where we are. And so it was fantastic. I thought it was a really great time.
Which is really interesting because it's, if you think about what you're doing now, like you're really kind of doing the same thing. You're just doing it with Wealthco, because you're taking all those different people, all their different ways of doing things. They're all their stories, all their approaches, all their perspectives, all their contexts. And you're putting it all together and making some really great things happen. You're just you're doing the same thing.
I would like to think so.
Well, what David would never say. He said, like, you were amazing. You're a guru. I mean, there was this pedestal that I'm like, wow, I had to keep looking up. Say, where is Sophie?
No, the only way this works, to implement and to work through something like this, it requires a lot of discipline. And so, we start our profiling in our interview stages today. So we used to do them after they were hired. Then we added, Colby before they were hired. And then we added, strengths before they were hired. Then we added print before they were hired. And so we do the whole thing up front. And it's really interesting whether the candidate is successful and joins us or not. Bar none, the feedback I've been getting, over the last year is that is probably one of the most compelling pieces of our recruitment process, in that the feeling is that if we're willing to invest up front, and it's not, and as all these things cost money and time, if we're willing to invest up front, what are we willing to do post, right, with our team? And so, we spend a lot of time up front, but we don't just let it go after that. Everybody on their desk has a little thing that says what their Colby is, and we're updating them right now to have all three. I'm not sure how it'll fit on a little card, but whatever, we'll sort it out. And our retreats always have a component that talks about one of the profiles, or, and it's about giving people the opportunity to grow, not only professionally, but personally. And we've been very fortunate. So David and I were both members of Strategic Coach. We are members of Tech. So we've had a lot of chances to develop ourselves and to, work with great mentors and talent to grow. And so for us to be able to bring that back and have our team have the opportunity to take advantage, because not everybody will, kind of buy in, but the opportunity to take advantage of that, and also be able to take that wherever they go when they leave. Right. So not everybody will stay forever, but in the end, I always, when people are leaving, it's, don't forget your profiles. Don't forget to look at that. Don't forget when you're working on another team or looking at other people, how it all kind of plays together.
I always say there's nothing wrong with being a great business to be from.
And and I agree with that. It's interesting because there's different perspectives, but I've come and gone from some amazing businesses. I've worked with some great people. I still have really good relationships with many of them, and people have their journey that they have to walk. And for some, we might just be a stopping ground for a short time, medium amount of time, or a long time. And it's not my journey, it's their journey. So I can't feel bad or upset as a business owner, as president of our company, if people make a choice that's right for them and their families. I can't.
So yeah, I was about relationships, right? It's a reason or a season or a lifetime, and right, and people will come and go, and if you give them, give them the grace to come and go and support them along the way, and you become a great business to be from, right? They will be a raving fan.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
again, this is why I wanted you on the podcast, because all the wonderful things you're doing for people. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
and I think, Warren, too, like the one thing too is there's to be humility in it. We don't always get it right. And, as a business, you do your best to kind of put all the things in place and to live your values, to live your culture. And sometimes you trip up because it's made up of humans, right? But you do always do your best. And that's kind of always been my philosophy is if it's worth doing, then do it right, or do your best at it. And
absolutely. And wherever there's people problems.
For sure. And you know what, if it was easy, then everybody would do it. But I think it's the people that make it so interesting and so fascinating. And when I moved from so I built a book within Wealthco and worked with clients. And when my partners asked me to move into more of the operational role and more of the people, I had to rewire my thinking a bit about, my clients are now my team. Our clients are our CPA firms. They are kind of that broader scope. And so I think when you look at who you're working with as your client, and it doesn't matter what level of the organization you're at. So I always say that within Wealthco, we've got 3 clients. Our number one client is our team, our internal team. So we all are clients to one another, and how we treat one another should be reflective of that. Our CPA firms, our integrated advisory CPA firms, and then the end client. So we've got 3 client groups that we need to make sure are, satisfied, happy, and getting the support and the work that they need done.
One thing you said about, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, right? And a good friend of mine said to me one time, so, well, what is easy to do is also easy not to do. And because it's easy, right? So, I mean, yeah, dealing with people and to the level that you are it is hard work. It is hard work. But very rewarding, but it's very rewarding on the other side, right?
There's nothing better than watching somebody grow, evolve, take on new challenges, experience that success, and, kind of grow in their own confidence. There's nothing quite like that.
So in saying that, I have one more question. I'm going to move on. I'll be a good steward of time. What is your unique ability, since you are a strategic coach?
So my unique ability, has kind of tweaked and evolved over time, but I would say that my unique ability is to be able to see people for who they are, and to recognize and help them recognize the strengths they have within, and how to grow and develop those so that they can achieve the success they want to achieve.
That is a wonderful unique ability, and also how you better the pond. So that's again another reason why we have you here. So, so Sophie, I believe that we are all odd ducks. I believe we're all misfits.
Sure we are.
Right. So tell me about a time when you didn't fit in, positive or negative, and what have you done differently to stand out? What makes you awesome? What makes you you? What makes you the odd duck?
So I am me. So people will say, are you the same at work as you are at home? And I am. So I've been told that I'm quite funny. I can be fairly irreverent. And when my inside voice comes out my outside, and not irreverent in a disrespectful way, but putting things probably the way people are thinking about them. So maybe in that sense, I'm an odd duck. I don't really care what people think. And I always have wanted to be true to myself. And so in a world where it's been very male dominated, and that's just the truth, financial services are quite male dominated. A lot of women would be more hard and more kind of, and again, they're not so much today, but back in the day. And I always said I would still be me. So kindness is really important to me, being kind, being a good person, and in terms of, and that sounds kind of trite, but treating others the way you want to be treated. And to me, that's critical. And so I've always done that. I've lived my life that way. So, and it's worked out well. I've had tremendous success in my career, without having to sacrifice who I am.
So you're being an odd duck is just being who you are.
Yeah. And, and I think, like, I love the 80s, not the clothes, but I'm an 80s music lover. I love to have fun and to do different crazy things. And so, yeah, like I don't need to look a certain way or to behave a certain way, I think, to be good at what I do. And I don't think anybody does truly. I can wear a suit like the best of them, and I do wear lots of, lots of dress clothes, although you get the yellow today. But I think just being real honest and being who I am is probably a bit of an odd duck, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and just listening to you, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I'm hearing too is, do you see things that other people don't see? And I guess when it comes to people, right, do you see things that they might not see themselves, or do you see a different angle, or you look at things from a different perspective? And do you understand where I'm going there?
Yeah, so I would say probably I do. I've got a fairly high intuition and a high EQ. And so, you always kind of pay attention to what's not said. So I'll always watch in a meeting to what's not being said over what's being said, and really trying to, so the print, which is the why of you, which is one of the profiles that we do, talks about subconscious motivators. And I'll always use the example, I think when you and I chatted earlier, that people might have the same end result that they want to achieve, but why they want to get there is different. And if you don't understand why, then it's really hard to motivate to get to the end of that project or that initiative. And so that's always been something that, well, why is somebody behaving that way? Where somebody might go, well, they're just being jerks, or, like they're so frustrating. I'll be like, well, this is what, this is probably what's happening. And this might come from there and might come from this experience. And so I do try to be aware, and I don't think I can help myself truly in that, right? It's understanding. It's just, I think it's that intuitiveness about, like those subtle cues where maybe a discussion is going off the rails, or those subtle cues, it's understanding too. So in sales, like always saying, when somebody says yes, you move on. You don't need to continue selling, or you don't need to continue telling them how great it is or how great the solution will be. So it's just being aware of other people. And, it goes back to 2 ears, one mouth. I talk about that all the time. My mom used to say, you got 2 ears, one mouth, use them in that.
Use them accordingly, right? But I think that's interesting. So I'm glad you said that, being listening for what's not being said. And I think just by listening to it, that's kind of where I was going with that, right? I think that's a bit of what makes you an odd duck, is that you hear what other people don't hear, you see what other people don't see, because you're actually looking what's not being said versus what's being said. And I think that makes you stand out.
Well, I guess so.
And that's just you being you, right? And again, it's not ego, it's just that's what again, because we were all odd ducks, but we all have our own little thing that we do differently, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes you awesome. Celebrate it. So all right, so can you tell me about a time, Sophie, when someone did something for you that left an impact on your life?
So, that was the question that you sent over that I was like, that's a tough one, because so many people have made a lasting impact on my life. Like I believe that there isn't anybody that comes through your life that doesn't make an impact, even if it's just a small little one. Like, from, I was at a store up in Edmonton a couple of weeks ago, and they sent a thank you letter back after my purchase, which is very personalized. And, I went, like, what a great client experience. To, people that I've worked with that have given me an opportunity to, come into companies when maybe everybody said that they shouldn't, right? So I had, one VP with Maritime Life way back when, that Fred Wing, who, took a chance on me and my best friend, actually. And, everybody said, why are you hiring two female wholesalers? And he did, and it was great, and it really was kind of that stepping stone for my career. Or my grandma, who passed away before Christmas, who accepted everybody for who they were, and that was a great example to me as a kid and growing up. To, my partners in my team today, who every day I get to learn from, and I get to grow from, and I get to, spend time, being part of that. So that's a tough question for me to answer. And I talked about the host family in France and their experiences in the war, like all of those things tie together. And I think that if you view the people in your life as a gift, then you don't get super frustrated with them. You don't, sometimes I get frustrated, don't get me wrong. But you do kind of go, okay, like that's what makes them uniquely them, and be grateful for that.
And sometimes when things don't really go the way you want, you get frustrated. I call it the gift in the ugly box, right? Right. You look at it's like, it doesn't look that great from the outside, but actually when you actually unravel it and unpack it and actually get past the ugly wrapping, you realize that there is actually a gift in there.
Well, it's like I mentioned. So the book I'm just finishing up right now is The Obstacle is the Way. And, it has a lot to do with the Stoics and all of that. And it is about like every opportunity, like the opportunities come out of both good and bad. And it's what you do with it that's really important. And it's as I've been listening to that book, I'm like, that's how I've kind of just lived my life. Is you take an obstacle and you go, okay, and that obstacle could be something, or it could be a person, or it could be, whatever, and go, okay, well, what am I going to learn from this? And what have I learned from this? And how am I going to make it better as I move forward? And what maybe did I contribute to that was good or bad or indifferent? And like, it's just life.
Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Okay, so now what do you, just bring you right up to speed to today, what are you doing presently right now to better the pond? And the more important question as to why does it matter?
So I believe that to those who much has been given, much is required. And I believe that. So I've always volunteered. I've sat on boards. I sit on a board right now, the Calgary Children's Cottage, participating in a couple of their committees. I believe that you do give back. Like I've done a lot of different things in that way. And I think that, if you've got talent, that you should share it. And so whether it's with a team, so again, investing in our team on, some of these different profilings, how they work, how they can grow, that's really important to me. we've been talking a lot about, the next generation of, wealth advisors, financial planners, insurance people. Where do they come from? How do we, CPAs, how do we bring them into this business and convert and change our business for the better so that Canadians do have a better experience as they go through? And what does that look like? And investing in kind of that thought process. And I met with some of our younger team a couple of weeks ago for lunch, and just getting their feedback and going, okay, what are they looking for? How can we be a different company? And so I think for me, it's always about bettering the pond. It's always about making sure that you're creating a great environment for your people, because whether they stay or they go, they then take that out to our clients. They take that back to their families. It's encouraging my kids. It's encouraging, okay, how are you going to make things different? Because it's tough for kids right now. Like, there's a lot of cynicism out there about like, we've killed the world, or we're doing this. And I always ask them, I'm like, what are you going to do to make it different? And I think that if every day you ask yourself the question, what can you do to make it different? Or how can I make somebody's life better? And that might be by asking them a really tough question, or it might be by suggesting that they, maybe read a book, or maybe supporting them in additional education, or it might be just in taking them for lunch and having a good mentorship conversation. So those are all ways. And I one of my goals for next year is I am going to work on my, I'm going to become a certified coach, which I think is really important. And it's something that I do every day and I love to do. So I'm going to kind of take it to that next level. So we bring that back to the team.
That's fantastic. Constantly educating yourself, constantly growing. When you're talking earlier about, having the impact at work, whether somebody's they come in the organization, they're in the organization, or they leave the organization, right? You're creating that ripple effect, right? Because then you just don't know how far those ripples are going to go out, right? Because as it goes to somebody who you've affected their life at work, they're going to go home and they're going to positively affect things at home, which that person could then go and positively affect their friends, or however. It's really, there's really you just don't know how far those things are going to go, and all your job is drop the pebble in and start the ripple effect.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So one question is, so why does this matter so much to you, Sophie? I mean, you're very passionate about it. It's in your DNA. That's very, very clear. Why does it matter so much?
Well, I think that I don't like, to me, and I guess maybe it's part of my DNA. Why not? Right? Like, why wouldn't it matter? Why would we say that as, whether we're business owners or as a company, why would it not matter? It should matter. Your people are your number one resource. They're your number one, like that's what helps you grow and move forward. And if you don't believe in that, you don't invest in that, you don't focus on that, then I think you could grow a good company, but I don't think you grow a great company. And so success achieved in an ill-gotten way. I'm not saying that others that don't focus on it are ill-gotten, but success that's gotten to a place where you've done it stepping on the backs of other people, or you've been, I don't know, I don't want that. That's pretty simple. That's not what I want. I'd like people to be better, right? Or have grown, perhaps. Some might not think it's better, but to have grown or had an opportunity to learn more about themselves by being associated with us.
Fantastic. So looking back and looking forward, and the lessons that you've learned along your journey, right? Can you, paint me a picture of your golden pond? What does your future look like, Sophie?
So, trusting your gut. I've learned that trusting your gut is really important, and I will continue to trust my gut. And I will continue to focus on, building confidence in myself and in the team. And that, understanding if we need to tweak as we go on and massage how we do things, that's okay. But it's that inherent knowledge that we can and are making a difference, and we will continue to make a difference and achieving our big, hairy, audacious goal, which is changing way Canadians receive financial services today. And, the other one I think too is to be you, that, we need to keep being ourselves. We need to encourage our team to be themselves. And, that comes across in the work that we do. It comes across to our partners and it comes across to the clients. And I think that's really important. And, continuing to educate or to share those learnings, whether it's doing podcasts like this and just talking about why that's so important. And even if somebody listens and goes, I'd like to learn more about, Colby or print or strengths, or, what I remember I did, there's lots of personality profiles. I did one way back when, but I've never dusted it off, and they go back and they take another look. Like, that's important. And, as we continue to grow, like this, we've taken on 60% more space. We're moving next year. Just to keep doing that, and to, saying that it doesn't all have to be the same. You don't have to be an insistent fact find to be good in finance, or, you need to have a balance of all these different pieces, but it takes a whole bunch of personalities to keep it interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, that goes back to my whole metaphor. Yeah, it does. And it has to go back to my metaphor of the flying V, right? Is that, geese flying a V for a reason. That each one is different and unique, but they're all helping each other, as long as we know where we're going. And I love the fact that you used a BHAG, which is not something I don't hear that very often from people. So, as long as you know what your big, hairy, audacious goal is, you know where you're going, you have a clear vision as to why you're doing it, right? And, and then as they fly, right, you're all flying in it together. And what's really interesting, and I use in my metaphor, is that you're all flying at the same altitude. The CEO does not fly 500 feet higher than, the lead goose doesn't fly 500 feet higher. Right, they're all flying, everybody's flying the same altitude. We're all getting there together. And I think that's one thing that which really got my attention when I talked to David, and just about your culture is exactly where you are living and breathing, where I try to get companies to get to.
Yeah, well, what I'll say is it's a lot of work, right? Like, you have to always be focused on that. It is one of the core pieces, and we talk about it, as shareholders, as leaders, right? How do we continue to build and enforce that culture? And, COVID was hard on us that way, because a lot of our culture was built face to face, and, we've had to be creative, and that's been great too, because it's forced us to look outside the 9 dots and, what is important, what is less important. But people are people. We talk a lot about, so we do a lot of technology, we have a lot of innovation, but we are a technology enabled company in order to give us more time to spend with people, whether they're our CPA partners, whether they're clients, that's why we want to leverage technology.
Love it. I love it. So I have one question for you that is not on the list of questions that I sent you. So you're not prepared for this, but I know you can think on your feet. So Sophie Blais, if you were standing on the top of a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
Be you.
That's my tagline. My God, we I think we share a brain.
That's either a good thing or a bad thing. Or, like I always say, great minds and fools seldom differ.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, it would be around being yourself, be true to yourself.
Very simple. Don't ever estimate the power of simplicity, right? So Sophie Blais, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for doing everything you're doing to better the pond. Obviously, not only with Wealthco, it's obviously spinning off, you're creating the ripple effect, to your family, your kids and all the people around it. So you do make the pond a better place. Where do people go to find you, Sophie?
So I can be connected with on LinkedIn. So just under Sophie Blais, or they could send me an email, which is just sophie@wealthco.ca.
All right, and should we, another little shout out to David Udi, who is the one of the founders of Wealthco, and I think
Yeah.
yeah, and you know, and one thing we got to give him a bit of a shout out is just, you know, from that top down, or that, you know, in my world is the lead goose, right? Who's really driving the culture that you have to, you know, that you know, you mean you're making accounting fun, but but really, and I'm serious about it. But you know, the top down leadership that you're involved with, right? Of really making sure that you're taking care of your people, that they're getting what they need, and you're setting them up for success. And I think that ripple obviously then ripples out to all your clients. I mean, it's again, it's a ripple effect all over again.
Absolutely.
So Sophie Blais, Blais on LinkedIn, and Sophie at wealthco.ca. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This was great. We could talk for hours and hours, I'm sure. And thank you for sharing my brain. And I'm, you know, the listeners, go and check Sophie out, connect with her. If you want to find out about culture, you want to talk about Colby, you want to talk about print, you want to talk about strengths, you talk about what she's doing in their industry, and do business with Wealthco. Why wouldn't you? And
the website, just in case, is integratedadvisory.ca. So our new website's being launched in a week. So it'll be launched by the time this podcast drops.
So integratedadvisory.ca. Okay, so then in a week they can check that out as well. But yeah, by the time this drops, then that'll already be active.
Perfect.
So thank you for your time, Sophie. Greatly appreciate it. And just, yeah, be you.
You be you too. Take care.
You too.